The autumn air in Portland carried a bite as it rustled through the nearly empty streets, the last amber leaves clinging to oak trees, like memories refusing to fade. At the edge of a dwindling farmer's market, a girl with haunted emerald eyes, small for her 12 years, flinched as her guardian's voice cut through the chill. Lila, those heirloom tomatoes cost more than your sorry life. If you drop them again, you'll sleep in the shed. The woman Agnes had a face like knotted rope and a grip that left bruises. Lila swallowed, adjusting the weight of the wicker basket against her hip. She knew the drill: deliver the produce to Mr. Callahan's bistro by 4:15, no excuses. Her sneakers scuffed the cracked sidewalk as she hurried the basket's handle, digging into her palm. Then, disaster. A loose cobblestone sent her sprawling, vegetables scattering like broken dreams. A single pomegranate rolled into the path of an oncoming Tesla, its tires screeching to a halt. The door swung open, and a man in a tailored overcoat emerged. Daniel Carter wasn't just any executive. He was a man who'd spent a decade searching for the daughter stolen from a stroller outside a Chicago cafe. He knelt to gather the fallen groceries, his hands steady, despite the storm inside him. When their fingers brushed near a bruised eggplant, he froze. Those eyes, her eyes the same shade as his late wife's. Lila recoiled, scrambling to collect the produce with trembling hands. I'm sorry, sir," she whispered, her voice frayed at the edges. Daniel's throat tightened. The scar on her wrist matched the birthmark his baby had. Just then, Agnes's shrill voice pierced the air from down the block. "You worthless girl!" Something in Daniel snapped. He blocked Agnes's path, his voice low but tectonic. "We need to talk. Now." Behind him, Lila hugged her elbows, unaware this stranger's next words would unravel the lie she'd lived. The wind howled, carrying the scent of rain and reckoning. Agnes's grip was a vice around Lila's wrist as she dragged her past the bistro's awning, but Daniel moved like a man possessed. "Stop!" The word cracked like a whip. Agnes spun, her lips curled in a sneer. "Mind your business, sir." But Daniel was already reaching into his coat pocket, not for his wallet, but for a creased photograph. The edges were frayed from years of handling. He thrust it toward Agnes, his hand trembling. "This was my daughter, taken from a car crash 9 years ago. Look at her eyes. Look at them." The photo showed a baby with a strawberry birthmark in the shape of a crescent moon on her collarbone, exactly like the one peeking above Lila's threadbare sweater. Agnes paled, but tightened her grip. "Coincidence!" She spat, though her voice wavered. Lila caught between them, stared at the photo. A flicker of recognition crossed her face, not of the baby, but of the teddy bear in the background. Hers. The one she'd hidden under her mattress, the one Agnes had always threatened to burn. Then came the twist. A police cruiser rounded the corner, responding to a noise complaint from the bistro. Officer Ruiz, a no-nonsense woman with a sharp eye, took one look at the scene and paused. "Everything all right here?" Daniel's voice was steel. "No. This woman's been hiding my daughter." Agnes's laugh was shrill. "She's my niece. Her junkie parents dumped her on me." But Lila, silent until now, reached into her pocket and pulled out the tattered bear. "I dream about the crash," she whispered. "The rain. The screaming. Mommy wouldn't wake up." Ruiz's radio crackled as she called for backup, but Daniel was already kneeling, his tears mixing with the drizzle. "I've searched every damn state," he choked out. Agnes lunged, not at Lila, but at the photo, shredding it with a snarl. "You'll never prove it." But it was too late. Lila's hand slipped into Daniel's, her small fingers curling around his like a lifeline. The wind howled, carrying away the last of the torn paper, but the truth was already written in their clasped hands and in the scarred-over wound of a stolen childhood. The glow of the computer screen cast sharp shadows across Daniel's face as he typed furiously. The police report from 9 years ago flickered on the display vehicle, stolen, no suspects, no leads. But his gut told him this wasn't just a random abduction. He zoomed in on the grainy security footage from a gas station near the crash site. A figure in a hoodie face obscured, carrying something bundled in a blanket. Then a detail he'd missed 100 times before, a wrist tattoo peeking out from the sleeve. A twisted serpent. His blood ran cold. Caleb Hayes, the man who'd threatened to take everything from him after the fraud trial. Daniel's fingers flew to his phone, dialing his old FBI contact, Mark Reynolds. "I need everything on Caleb Hayes' known associates," he demanded, voice raw. "And check for any properties under fake names, especially near Portland." As the call ended, his gaze landed on Lila's teddy bear, now resting on his desk. Something nagged at him. He turned it over and froze. Stitched into the fabric was a tiny, faded label, "To Harper, love Mommy." His breath hitched. This wasn't just a toy. It was a message. Lauren must have hidden it in the car seat. Then a notification pinged. Mark had sent a file of flagged border crossing into Mexico 2 years ago under an alias, Victor Cruz. Attached was a photo of Caleb smirking beside a woman with salt and pepper hair. Daniel's pulse spiked. Agnes. The pieces slammed together. Caleb had orchestrated the crash, handed Lila to Agnes, and fled. But why keep her alive? The answer came like a gut punch. Revenge wasn't enough for Caleb. He wanted Daniel to find her broken, afraid, and never whole again. Daniel grabbed his keys. This wasn't just a rescue mission anymore. It was a reckoning. Daniel's fingers hovered over the keyboard as the surveillance footage played on loop. Then he saw it, something the cameras had missed before. In the corner of the frame, just as Martha and Lila turned a corner, the girl's sleeve rode up slightly. A jagged scar ran along her forearm, pale against her skin. His breath caught. Harper had that same scar from a vaccination gone wrong when she was 6 months old. The pediatrician had called it a rare reaction. He zoomed in, his pulse roaring in his ears. The scar was identical. Sarah's warning echoed in his mind, but he was already typing again, hacking into traffic cams near Martha's last known address. The screen flickered to life, showing a quiet suburban street. Then movement. A black van, with tinted windows, idling near the house. The license plate was obscured, but the side door bore a faint logo, Crescent Holdings. Daniel's blood turned to ice. Crescent Holdings was a shell company Caleb had used during their business dealings. His phone buzzed a text from Mark. "Agnes's real name is Eleanor Voss. She's Caleb's half-sister. Watch your back." Daniel's hands shook as he grabbed his coat. This wasn't just about Lila anymore. Caleb had orchestrated everything, planting Agnes Eleanor to raise Harper in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And now, with Daniel closing in, the van could only mean one thing: they were moving her. He bolted for the door, his keys in one hand, the teddy bear in the other. Somewhere in the city, Lila Harper was running out of time. And Caleb. He'd finally get the confrontation he'd been waiting for. The night air was thick with the scent of rain as Daniel's car screeched onto the street. Somewhere ahead, headlights cut through the darkness, the van speeding toward the interstate. Daniel pressed the accelerator to the floor. 9 years of grief, rage, and unanswered questions were about to collide. The tomatoes bled red across the pavement as Harper stood shivering in the cold, her fingers turning blue at the tips. Martha's back was turned, berating a customer who dared to ask for a discount. That's when Harper noticed it, a black sedan crawling past the market, its windows tinted like the van from Daniel's footage. Her breath hitched. They were watching her. A memory flickered, one she'd buried deep. A man's voice, years ago, whispering to Martha, "If he ever gets close, we move her." Harper's pulse spiked. She'd always assumed he was some faceless threat. But now, with Daniel's face burned into her mind, the pieces clicked. She had to run. As Martha counted cash at the stall, Harper edged backward, melting into the crowd. Her heart hammered as she ducked behind a produce truck, then bolted down an alley. The cold air burned her lungs, but she didn't stop. At the end of the alley, a bus idled at a stop. She leapt on just as the doors hissed shut. Across the street, the sedan's door flew open. A man in a leather jacket, the same one from her nightmares, sprinted after the bus, his shout lost in the roar of traffic. Harper curled into a seat, clutching the teddy bear she'd smuggled under her coat. Its stitching had come loose, revealing a slip of paper tucked inside. With trembling hands, she unfolded it. "If you're reading this, you're Harper Thorne. Find the red door on Elm Street. Trust no one else." The bus lurched forward, carrying her toward a truth darker than she'd imagined. Behind her, the man pulled out a phone, his lips moving in a snarl. Somewhere, Daniel's car screeched around a corner closing in. The hunt had just turned into a war. The wind howled through the alley as Harper pressed her back against the brick wall, clutching the scrap of paper like a lifeline. Martha's voice still rang in her ears. "Caleb wants her moved tonight." But the address on the paper, Pat's Cafe, was only 3 blocks away. She could make it. Then a hand clamped over her mouth. "Not so fast, kid." The man's breath reeked of cigarette's leather jacket from the sedan. Harper bit down hard-tasting blood as he yelped and loosened his grip. She twisted free, but he lunged again, snagging her sleeve. Fabric tore as she wrenched away, leaving a strip of gray cotton in his grasp. She ran blindly, her pulse a drumbeat in her ears. A neon sign flickered ahead, Pat's Cafe. Harper burst through the door, colliding with a display of muffins. The warmth, the smell of cinnamon, it was a world away from Martha's cruelty. Behind the counter, Pat looked up, her smile fading, as she took in Harper's wild eyes and torn coat. Before she could speak, the door creaked open again. Not leather jacket. Him. The man from the market. Daniel stood frozen in the doorway, his gaze locking onto Harper's. In his hand he held a photograph. A baby, with a crescent moon birthmark. Pat stepped between them, gripping a rolling pin. "You need to leave, mister." Daniel didn't move. His voice cracked. "Harper. Your name is Harper Thorne." The world tilted. Thorne. The name Martha had spit like a curse. Harper's fingers found the birthmark under her collar, the same one as the baby in the photo. Outside, tires screeched. The black sedan skidded to a halt, and leather jacket emerged, a gun glinting in his waistband. Daniel's eyes hardened. He shoved a chair under the door handle and turned to Pat. "Call 911. Now." Then to Harper, he did the unthinkable. He knelt. "I won't let them take you again," he said, voice raw, "but I need you to trust me." Harper's breath hitched. For the first time in 9 years, someone was fighting for her. The door shuddered under a kick. Glass shattered. And Harper made her choice. She reached for Daniel's hand. The crumpled drawing trembled in Daniel's hands. The details were too precise, the curve of the Zakim Bridge, the gabled roof he'd helped Lauren pick out. Harper remembered. Even after 9 years in the dark, some part of her childhood had survived. Pat's voice cut through his thoughts. "That's not all." She pulled a small key from her apron pocket. "Harper left this taped under the counter last month. Said it was for when the bad men come." The key was rusted, stamped with the logo of a storage company. Daniel's phone buzzed. Sarah's contact lit up the screen. He answered on speaker. "We found Martha's real name," Sarah said, her voice tight. "Eleanor Voss. She's Caleb's half-sister. And get this, she rented a storage unit under an alias 2 weeks ago. GPS pinged her phone there 20 minutes ago." Daniel's grip on the key tightened. "Address, 17 Harborview Drive." "But Daniel..." Sarah hesitated. "Caleb's back in the country. ICE just flagged his passport." The cafe window shattered. Harper screamed as leather jacket lunged through the broken glass, gun raised. Daniel shoved her behind the counter, just as the first shot rang out. The bullet lodged in the wall where Harper's head had been. Pat dialed 911 with shaking hands, but Daniel was already moving. He yanked a fire extinguisher from the wall and hurled it at the gunman. The canister connected with a sickening crack, buying them seconds. "Run!" Daniel grabbed Harper's hand, bolting for the back door. Behind them, leather jacket groaned, struggling to his knees. The alley was a dead end. Harper tugged Daniel's sleeve, her voice a whisper. The key. The red door on Elm Street. Daniel's blood ran cold. Elm Street was 2 blocks from Harborview Drive. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. But Caleb's men would be closer. Harper pressed the key into his palm. Her eyes. Lauren's eyes filled with a trust he didn't deserve. "I remember the house by the river," she said. I remember you. The back door burst open. Leather jacket staggered into the alley, gun glinting. Daniel shielded Harper with his body and made a promise to her, to Lauren, to the ghosts of the past. This ends tonight. The alley's flickering streetlight cast long shadows as Harper clutched the warm package, the scent of chocolate, cutting through the stench of garbage. Daniel kept his voice low, urgent. Harper, I need you to listen carefully. That key you gave me, it opens a storage unit where Caleb's been hiding evidence. Proof that you're my daughter. Her breath hitched. Martha says you're lying. That my real parents dumped me. Daniel reached into his coat and pulled out the faded drawing. You drew this. It's our old house by the river. You remember it, Harper. Not because of photos. Because you lived there. A shout echoed from the market. Martha's voice sharp with rage. Harper, where are you, girl? Harper's fingers trembled around the hot chocolate. She'll lock me in the basement again if I'm late. Not this time. Daniel pressed a burner phone into her hand. Sarah's number is programmed in. If anything happens, hit call. But right now, we need to... A trash can clattered behind them. Martha stood at the alley's entrance, her face twisted in fury. In her hand glinted the unmistakable shape of a switchblade. Thought you could steal what's mine, Thorne? Harper recoiled, but Daniel stepped between them, his voice a growl. She was never yours, Eleanor. Martha Eleanor flinched at her real name. Then she lunged. Daniel shoved Harper aside as the blade grazed his forearm. Hot pain flared, but he barely felt it. He grabbed Eleanor's wrist, twisting until the knife clattered to the ground. The police are on their way, he lied. Caleb abandoned you. You're nothing to him. Eleanor's eyes darted toward the market, calculating escape routes. But Harper moved faster. She snatched the knife and backed away, her voice shaking but clear. You told me I was unwanted. But he came for me. Sirens wailed in the distance. Real ones this time. Eleanor spat on the ground. You'll regret this, girl. Caleb doesn't lose. She bolted into the maze of alleys, her footsteps fading. Daniel exhaled, pressing a hand to his bleeding arm. Harper stared at the knife, then at him. You're really my dad. The words shattered him. Yeah, kid. And I'm never letting you go again. Somewhere in the city, Caleb's empire was crumbling. But in that filthy alley, with Harper's small hand gripping his, Daniel Thorne finally came home. The lollipop wrapper crinkled in Daniel's palm as he placed it carefully into an evidence bag. Sarah had a contact at the lab who could run DNA tests overnight, final proof Harper was his. But as he sealed the bag, his phone lit up with an encrypted message. You should have stayed gone, Thorne. Now she pays for your mistakes. Attached was a photo, Harper asleep on a cot in a dim room, her wrists bound with zip ties. Daniel's blood turned to ice. Caleb had her. The next image made his stomach drop, a time-stamped warehouse address and a scrawled note. Come alone, or she dies like Lauren. Across the city, Harper stirred in the darkness, her wrists raw from struggling. A door creaked open, and Caleb Hayes stepped into the faint light, his smile a knife's edge. Daddy's on his way, sweetheart. Let's see how brave he is when he finds out what really happened to Mommy. Harper's voice was small but defiant. He'll beat you. Caleb laughed, crouching to flick the crescent moon birthmark on her collarbone, the one he'd once tried to burn off when she was a toddler. Funny, that's exactly what he said about me 9 years ago. Daniel was already in his car, gunning the engine. Sarah's voice crackled through the Bluetooth. Ethan, it's a trap. SWAT's 20 minutes out. I'm not waiting. Daniel's knuckles whitened on the wheel. This time he'd either bury the past or die trying. The warehouse loomed ahead, its broken windows like hollow eyes. Somewhere inside, Harper hummed a lullaby, the same one Lauren used to sing to drown out her fear. And Caleb. He checked his watch, grinning. Right on time. The DNA results lit up Daniel's phone screen at 3:17 a.m. Match confirmed 99.98% parental probability. His hands shook, not with fear, but with a white-hot fury. Caleb hadn't just stolen his daughter. He'd erased her. Sarah's voice was tight over the phone. We've tracked Caleb to a shipping container yard near the docks. SWAT's moving in at dawn. No. Daniel was already loading his Glock. He's got Harper in an apartment on Wharf Street. Martha just texted him the address. I hacked her phone. A beat of silence. Then Sarah's sharp inhale. Ethan, if you go in guns blazing, Harper could... I'm not risking SWAT spooking him into a hostage situation. Daniel jammed the gun into his waistband. But I am walking out with my daughter tonight. Yeah. The apartment stank of mildew and cigarette smoke. Harper crouched in a closet, her fingers working at the zip ties. Caleb's voice carried through the thin walls. Thorne's on his way. When he gets here, you'll both learn what happens when you cross me. A floorboard creaked. Harper froze as the closet door cracked open. Martha, her face streaked with tears, pressed a switchblade into Harper's bound hands. Cut yourself loose and run, she whispered. I left the fire escape unlatched. Harper's eyes widened. Why are you helping me? Martha's lips trembled. Because I heard Caleb on the phone. He never planned to let you or me walk away after tonight. Downstairs, a window shattered. Caleb's laughter cut off mid-snarl. Thorne, you're early. A gunshot. Then another. Harper flinched as the closet door flew open. Daniel stood there, blood streaking his temple, his gaze locking onto hers. Time to go home, kiddo. Behind him, Caleb writhed on the floor, clutching his leg, but his free hand was reaching for a fallen pistol. Harper didn't hesitate. She lunged, slamming the switchblade into Caleb's wrist. His scream echoed as the gun skidded away. Daniel hauled her into his arms just as SWAT burst through the door. Sarah's voice crackled over the radio. Suspect contained. Moving to secure the girl. But Harper was already secure. For the first time in 9 years, she buried her face in her father's shoulder and sobbed. Somewhere in the chaos, Caleb spat blood and grinned. You think this is over? Petrov's still out there. And he knows about her now. Daniel didn't look back. He carried Harper into the dawn, her weight a gift he'd thought lost forever. Let the world burn. He had what mattered. The storm lashed against the warehouse windows as Daniel crouched behind a stack of shipping containers, his Kevlar vest digging into his ribs. Through the rain, he could just make out Caleb's silhouette, backlit by a single hanging bulb, and the hulking shape of Viktor Petrov, a bear of a man with a scar running down his cheek. Sarah's voice crackled in his earpiece. SWAT's in position. Wait for my signal. Then he saw her. Harper shoved forward by Martha, her small frame trembling in a too-thin jacket. Caleb gripped her shoulder, his voice carrying over the drumming rain. You wanted proof, Viktor. Here's Thorne's greatest weakness alive. Petrov's laugh was a low rumble. A child. You expect me to believe this girl is worth millions? Caleb's grin turned feral. Not just any child. His. And if Thorne doesn't transfer the funds by midnight, we drop her in the harbor with cement shoes. Daniel's finger twitched toward his trigger. Sarah's warning hissed in his ear. Ethan, stand down! Too late. A metallic clang echoed through the warehouse. Harper had kicked over a steel pail, breaking free as Caleb lunged for her. In the chaos, Daniel moved. Gunfire erupted. He barely registered the searing pain in his shoulder as he yanked Harper behind cover. Her face was streaked with rain and tears, but her voice was steady. I knew you'd come. Caleb's shout cut through the gunfire. Thorne! Daniel peeked over the crate. Caleb stood in the open pistol aimed at Harper. Time slowed. Then a single shot rang out. Caleb crumpled Sarah's smoking rifle visible in the rafters. Petrov bolted for the docks, but SWAT dogs were already on his heels. Daniel pressed Harper's face into his chest, shielding her as the warehouse dissolved into shouts and flashing lights. When he finally pulled back, her small hand touched his bleeding shoulder. You're hurt. He cupped her face, thumb brushing the crescent moon birthmark. Worth it. Behind them, Caleb gasped his last breath, the storm swallowing his final curse. The war was over, and as the first rays of dawn broke through the clouds, Daniel Thorne carried his daughter home. The warehouse erupted into chaos. Flashbangs detonated, agents swarmed, and Viktor Petrov hit the concrete with a snarl. But Ethan only had eyes for Harper. Martha yanked the girl backward, a knife flashing in the strobe of tactical lights. Stay back! She shrieked, pressing the blade to Harper's throat. Ethan didn't think. He lunged. A gunshot rang out not from the agents, but from the shadows. Martha jerked her grip, slackening as blood bloomed across her shoulder. Caleb. Nobody takes what's mine. Caleb hissed, pistol smoking. He grabbed Harper's arm, dragging her toward a rusted service door. Ethan sprinted after them, Sarah's shouts fading behind him. The door led to the docks, where waves churned against rotting pilings. Caleb shoved Harper toward the edge, his gun now aimed at her head. One step closer, Thorne and she joins the fish. Harper's voice cut through the storm. "Dad, look out!" Ethan ducked as Victor Petrov barreled past him, roaring, his hands still cuffed, but his rage unchecked. He plowed into Caleb like a freight train. Both men teetered on the dock's edge, then vanished into the black water. Ethan hauled Harper away, just as the harbor swallowed Caleb and Victor whole. Gasping, Harper clung to him, her small body shaking. "Is it over?" He pressed his lips to her rain-soaked hair. "Yeah, kid, it's over." Behind them, Sarah emerged, her face grim. "Harbor Patrol will dredge for bodies, but that water's lethal this time of year." Ethan didn't care. Harper was safe. As dawn broke over Boston, he carried her to his car, her head resting against his shoulder. For the first time in 9 years, the ghosts were silent. And the future, it was finally theirs. Daniel stood over Caleb, the storm still raging inside him, even as the warehouse fell silent. Caleb's words slithered through the air like poison, but Daniel felt Harper's small hand slip into his warm, alive reel. "You took 9 years from us," Daniel said, his voice steady, "but you made one mistake." Caleb sneered. "Oh, enlighten me!" Daniel knelt until they were eye level, his grip tightening on Harper's fingers. "You let her remember." Harper stepped forward, her voice clear despite the tears. "I remember the lullabies, the house by the river, and you." She pointed at Caleb, her finger unwavering. "Dragging me from the car while Mommy was still inside." Caleb's smirk faltered. Sarah moved in, snapping a second set of cuffs on him. "That's not just kidnapping. That's felony murder. You're done, Hayes." As agents hauled Caleb away, Daniel finally pulled Harper into his arms. She buried her face in his shoulder, her sobs muffled against his coat. "I want to go home," she whispered. Daniel looked past the rusted warehouse walls toward the first light of dawn, breaking over Boston Harbor. "Let's go home, Harper." Behind them, Caleb's screams faded into the roar of the ocean, a fading echo of the past. Ahead, the road stretched open and bright. Together, they stepped into the light. The sunlight danced across the kitchen table as Harper traced her fingers over the photograph of Lauren. A quiet understanding settled in her eyes, not just of loss, but of belonging. "I remember her voice," Harper whispered, suddenly catching Ethan off guard. "She used to sing about a bluebird." Ethan's breath hitched. "Fly Away Home." Lauren's lullaby. He hadn't sung it in 9 years. Harper hummed a few notes, hesitant at first, then stronger. Ethan joined in their voices, weaving together, like the threads of a broken tapestry finally mended. Outside, a bluebird landed on the garden fence, its wings shimmering in the light. Harper gasped, pointing. Ethan squeezed her hand. "See that?" he said, voice rough with emotion. "Mom always said bluebirds carry wishes home." Harper leaned against him, the photograph clutched to her chest. "I think mine finally came true. In that sunlit kitchen, with the ghost of Lauren's laughter in the air, and Harper's small weight against his side. Ethan Thorne realized something extraordinary after 9 years of winter-spring had finally come. The swing creaked softly as Harper soared into the golden afternoon light, her laughter weaving through the maple trees. Ethan watched, his hand still warm from the phone call with Sarah. Caleb was gone. Martha was gone. The ghosts were laid to rest. Then Harper did something unexpected. She jumped mid-swing, landing with a thud in the grass. Before Ethan could react, she sprinted to the garden's edge and plucked a single blue wildflower. "Mom's favorite, right?" she panted, pressing the blossom into his palm. "I remember. She always tucked them behind my ear." Ethan's throat tightened. He'd never told her that. Some memories, it seemed, were written in the blood. Later, as fireflies dotted the twilight, Harper leaned against him on the porch steps. Dad! The words still sent a thrill through him. What if, what if I forget her again? Ethan wrapped an arm around her shoulders. We'll remember together. Every day. He pulled out his phone and opened a video, Lauren radiant and laughing, blowing kisses at baby Harper. See, she's right here. Harper's tears gleamed in the screen's glow as she reached out, touching the image of her mother's face. And in that quiet moment, under a sky dusted with stars, the Thorne family was whole once more, not in spite of the scars, but because of them. Because some loves are stronger than time, stronger than loss, stronger than revenge.